Hi, this is Roger Daltrey. Hi, this is Eric Clapton.
Hi, this is John Bon Jovi. This is Jeff Keith from Tesla. This is Nikki Sixx of Motley Crue.
When you've got to rock, ARfm.
Tonight we got two guests lined up for the show. We hope they'll be joining us a little bit later on. Around about 6:30 I will be talking to Russell from Uriah Heep. And about an hour later to Rob from Saracen about their brand new album based on the life of Marilyn Monroe.
Broadcasting from London, England to Europe and around the world.
Your music moved me.
Nothing like a good movie.
On the World Wide Web. ARfm.
It's time for Saracen. Escape music. The sound of Saracen, title track of the album Marilyn. Guest vocals, of course, from Robin+Beck. And I'm pleased to say, joining me on the line is young Rob.
Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Oh, I'm great. Well, we're going to start with this. Well, actually, let's go back to the beginning. When somebody told me you were recording an album, it was a concept album, and it was based on the life of Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
I thought, how the hell is that going to work? Now, you tell me, because it has worked.
Thank you. I can tell you how it came about. We were away with great friends in December 2009. Mm-hmm. One of those was Richard Lowe, who I started the band with back in the 70s.
Yep.
And those two guys, Richard and Mick, started pestering me about music. Why wasn't I writing anything? And I said, well, I've got nothing in my locker. And without inspiration, I can't do a note. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, what about that JFK project you were working on a couple of years ago? I said, well, he died a death, a bit like him, really. In that, I didn't rehearse that. It was pretty good, wasn't it? I said, I wrote one song, but when I researched the guy's life, with all due respect to the guy, mm-hmm. I didn't find it very inspirational, and the project died. I said, in fact, there were only three aspects about JFK that I could be inspired by musically: his death, mm-hmm. the Cuba crisis, and his affair with Marilyn Monroe. At which point, the silence was deafening. Yeah. Then we all started talking at once, because we knew from a casual conversation walking along a canal path in Bedfordshire, we'd struck gold. Mm. And I don't know about if you write music, Steve. Obviously, I try to. And when the inspiration's inbound, you know it's coming and you can't keep it back. Mm-hmm. And it was very, very different from The Knights Templar, our previous album subject, but I was as inspired. And unlike JFK, when I started to read up about her life, I just found it incredibly inspirational.
I mean, there's everything with her, isn't there? There was the success, but it was also a very, very tragic life.
Oh, big time. I mean, a young orphan, had very little time with her mother for her first years, made a ward of court to her auntie, who really brought her up and told her she would be a star someday. How good a forecast was that? Had a go at modelling, was spotted by chance while making parachutes in a munitions factory. Had a go at modelling, became a world star at that, and then the rest is history in terms of her acting and the icon she became by the mid-50s, but had a lot of trouble with doctors and nutters and barbiturates, and really had none of the support that the rest of us hopefully take for granted in our lives. And a tragic death at the age of 36.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you know, I can only compliment you on the music, because
Thank you very much.
It really has. I mean, it struck a chord with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And people here at ARfm have picked out tracks and things like that, and they're going, it's such a powerful sort of sound.
Thank you.
Obviously, with a subject like a very iconic female, you had to find some female voices.
Yeah.
Now, how did you go about that process?
Right, well, to begin with, I wasn't actually looking for female voices, because I was writing in the third person, she this, they that. And then one day I was working on the song Make This Body Work, which deals with the then teenage Norma+Jeane discovering modelling.
Yeah.
And I was singing along as best as I can sing, and I suddenly found myself singing in the first person. I was singing I this, I that.
Yeah.
I suddenly realised, gosh, this one song has got to be delivered by Marilyn or Norma+Jeane.
Yep.
I need a woman, don't we all? So I immediately got onto my great pal and industry legend, Bruce Mee.
Right, yeah.
I mean, you will know Bruce, I suspect.
Yes, we know him very well.
I said,
yeah.
I've got this track, it's got to be sung by a woman. What have you got in your locker, Bruce? And it took him about 3 nanoseconds to say, it's got to be Robin+Beck.
Yeah.
I said, wow, you're serious? So Bruce brokered the arrangement. Robin and I got in touch. It was quite tense for me. She loved the idea of the album. She loved the song when I sent it over, with my son Richard singing the vocals. You can imagine, a bit of a strain for him. She loved the song. She delivered it, and it just blew me away. And at that point, it was just going to be one song, and that's how it started.
Right, okay. And then, of course, you've got Issa involved in it.
Yeah, well, before that, the day after the MP3 came from James and Robin, I played it to another friend of mine, Howard, and I said, get a load of this. And as Robin started singing the song, Howard smiled so widely, I thought he was going to break his jaw. It was fantastic. So he said to me, we were in the car, actually, and he said to me, how many songs is Robin going to do? And I said, well, just this one. Now, I won't use his exact language on air, but he said, you've got to be joking.
Mm-hmm.
She has got to do all the Marilyn songs, and that's where that came from. And so I ended up writing some songs specifically for Robin to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then you asked about Issa. I wrote a song called Hold On, which is effectively the legal guardian of the young girl telling the young Norma+Jeane, hold on, you'll be a star someday.
Yep.
And my good friend Carenza, she did all the backing vocals on the song and indeed across the album.
Mm-hmm.
She demoed the song, but it was then the record company rather than Bruce this time said, let's go looking for someone. I think Issa could nail this. And boy, did she nail it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely wonderful. Clearly, English is not her first language, and the Norwegian inflection in her voice, it just adds to what she's done. And she's taken like Robin has, she's taken my song and just made it hers, and blew me away.
So, when you got all the sort of finished parts back together, how did you feel?
Delighted. When you set out to write a concept album, the Knights Temple of Oxen Excelsior took me a lot longer because we were recording another album at the same time. But when you get towards the end and you see what started out as internet searches and notes on paper and a bit of programming and a bit of rough guitaring in the studio, and you get to the point where you've got the whole thing shaped up, it really is wonderful. I don't mean the album's wonderful, it's not for me to say, but the experience of creating a concept album is wonderful, and I was delighted. You've actually you went to the trouble, I presume, in your research, because you've used some of her own words in the songs, haven't you? Clearly someone who's an icon of that level. If you want images or words about or words from Marilyn Monroe, you need several lifetimes to view all that. But she was quite verbal with her fantastic quotes about life, and they are very poignant. Some of them are funny. She was a great comedienne. Some are very saddening, and some just give you a different view on life. But I definitely used some of them, and I hope they help to bring the album alive. In fact, when we were working on the album, we also had voiceovers in between the tracks in the early days, some of which was Marilyn herself speaking.
Right.
And of course that really added colour and depth to the story. But I approached 20th Century Fox to see if I could have permission to use the ones they own.
Yeah.
And they were very polite and businesslike, but said no. So that's why there are no links from Marilyn on the album.
Oh, that's a shame.
But,
yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised, unfortunately, because a lot of the big corporations do, particularly with someone like her, they're going to try and keep on hold of whatever they can keep their hold of.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all right me telling them I'm not going to abuse the permission they give me to use this clip from Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, but how do they know? Yeah. And of course, I shouldn't say of course, next year will be the 50th anniversary of her death.
Yeah.
It's bound to be a big year. Should be all over our screens, and quite rightly, why would they give someone from a village in England like me permission to use some of the stuff?
Yeah, good point. Now, I mean, is there a stage further that you could take this? And I'll use the example of something like Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime. Could you make a video of the album?
Gosh, we certainly could if somebody came up with the...
Ka-ching, 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 yeah.
I tell you what I thought you were going to say, Steve, and this is something that everybody who's been involved in this project has said to me independently from either side of the Atlantic. They think this would make a great West End musical stage show.
Yeah.
Or, obviously, Robin said the same, but she replaced West End with Broadway.
Yeah.
And I agree, and we are in the early throes of seeing if we can make that happen. But I'm just a humble guitarist, so I don't have Andrew Lloyd Webber's phone number. But we do think there is potential to use this music with a stage show which tells this story, which would be glamorous but poignant and sad, and that the synopsis we've put together with some people who are a little more involved in that side of the business, I have to say I'm really impressed with. So it's in the very early days. If anybody out there knows anyone who'd like to get involved, we're really up for hearing, because we're not very rich with contacts for that kind of thing.
We need Cameron McIntosh's number, that's what it is.
Absolutely.
No, I mean, that actually is one stage further than I had thought. As I say, I just thought maybe, maybe if you could, say, shoot a video and do a sort of concept video, that would be like one stage further. You've taken it one stage further even still. But I mean, I love the idea.
I do, and well, thank you for the idea. And in fact, I got a taste of that because we do have a 10-minute taster of the album on YouTube. And I've got great feedback from fans and perhaps new fans who've watched that. There is some moving footage in there, there's still footage, and obviously there's a taste of each of the tracks. Yeah. Now, of course, that's only a tiny example of what you're talking about, but I would love it if we could put something longer together along those lines.
I mean, obviously, one of my first thoughts would be make a good stage performance, i.e. you getting up and doing it, but the logistics of having... particularly if you use the original artists, the logistics of having those people singing it on stage is always going to be a nightmare because you're all in different countries.
Absolutely, yeah.
And live gigs, as we all know, and particularly in the UK, are quite hard to come by nowadays.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that. A few weeks ago, 4 of us went to see We Will Rock You in Birmingham.
Yep.
I'm sure a lot of people listening have seen it. A marvellous show, great music. So 90% of me was just enjoying the show. 10% of me was seeing our Marilyn show up there. Yeah. And in that way, I really do believe it would work.
Oh, most definitely. I want a ticket if it happens.
You're there.
As for take this project aside, as for the band, I mean, anything happening or anything planned?
Well, nothing like the previous guest. Uriah Heep was everything is happening. There are really 2 Saracens these days. There's a Saracen that play live, but they're not a giant touring band or playing every night. They do specific gigs. A great one they did this year, they did a festival in Germany called Keep It True.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they were invited because it was 30 years since the release of our debut album, Heroes, Saints and Fools, in 1981. So there are 5 people in that band who I can tell you do a fabulous job of playing our music. I can brag about them because I'm not in the band. There is another 5 whose love is to write and record.
Right.
Clearly I'm involved in that lot.
Yeah.
There are 2 people in both. That's the lead singer, Steve, who's been with Saracen pretty much since day one.
Yeah.
And there's a keyboard player, Paul, who joined in 2003.
Yeah.
So they have planned, I know they're doing festivals next year in places like Barcelona and Athens, and doing occasional gigs here in the UK. In terms of recording, you know, I'm so close to the end of this fabulous project, I can't pretend I've got anything new in my locker to reveal on air tonight.
Yeah.
I said to friends, if I'm asked, I'll say the only way to follow an album on Marilyn Monroe is to do one on Nigella Lawson. And it may well come with a DVD and a recipe book.
Excellent. Oh, Rob, thank you very much for that.
Okay.
Cheers for joining us on ARfm. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I seriously wish you all the best with this. Because
thank you very much, and thanks for having me on. It's been an absolute delight.
It deserves to do something, this album. It really does.
Great stuff.
We're going to play out with a track that you picked, actually. So I'm going to let you tell. I'm going to let you tell the story behind "Break the Spell."
Well, Marilyn in the early 60s was really struggling with barbiturates and crazy doctors who were putting her on medication she didn't need, and she befriended a few people, including Frank Sinatra, and she came out of this period. But when she was in the period, she couldn't break the spell of the problem of needing downers to put her to sleep and uppers to wake her up. And so this is not Marilyn singing, this is Steve singing about her, saying, you need to stop this crap, you need to just live a normal life and break that spell.
Thank you very much indeed, Rob. Here you go, folks. This is Saracen and Break the Spell.
Thank you.
Saracen from the album Marilyn, out on Escape Music. I strongly recommend you buy that album, it really is good.
Hi, this is David Coverdale from Whitesnake, my favourite station, ARfm.
With no less than 5 tracks on the album telling their story in Marilyn Monroe's own words, Escape Music bring you Saracen's concept album, Marilyn. Outstanding guest appearances on this album include Norwegian rock sensation Issa, FM frontman Steve Overland, and the sensational Robin+Beck. Marilyn is a beautiful recording, full of finely honed rock music, powerful ballads and passionate vocals. Each song perfectly represents the stages in her life. In short, a masterpiece. Out now.